Hello, Mountain View Bible Camp staff and campers. Thank you for joining us as we spend the next few days talking about our Mountaintop Advent series. Each day, I will be sharing a chapter from the book Love Came Down at Christmas by Sinclair B. Ferguson. This book takes us through the famous love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13, while also reminding us that love, the Lord Jesus Christ himself, came down at Christmas. Chapter 1 of Men and Angels. If I speak in the tongues of men and angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 1. Angels are in fashion, at least at Christmas time. Look at any collection of hymns or songs, and you may well find more references to angels in the section marked Advent than in all the other sections added together. The New Testament word angel means messenger. Every time angels appear in the Christmas story, they are carrying messages from heaven to earth. In the run-up to Jesus' birth, angels appeared to Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist, to Mary, the mother of Jesus, and in dreams to Joseph, his adoptive father. Like his Old Testament namesake, Joseph was a dreamer. A vast crowd of them appeared to a few shepherds in the fields outside Bethlehem. Interestingly, it's clear that all these angels spoke the local language, which happens to have been Aramaic, a form of Hebrew. Angels can speak in human tongues. So what does Paul mean when he begins the love chapter with a reference to angel tongues as well as human tongues? This isn't the first time Paul has talked about tongues in this letter to the Corinthians. In the previous chapter, he writes about their ability to speak in various kinds of tongues. In the next chapter, he devotes 28 verses to discussing these tongues. Clearly, this was a big deal in Corinth. Whether these tongues refer to foreign language or to aesthetic speech, the Corinthians, or at least some of them, may have believed they could speak angel. Presumably, speaking angel carried more kudos than any other language. Imagine being able to speak the language of heaven, where some of them even claiming that they had spoken with angels. When one of our grandsons was about 8 or 9, he told me how excited he was to be going to France for his summer holiday, because I'll be able to speak and practice my French on the French. I said nothing. Despite 5 miserable years of studying French in school, I was silently thinking, the French are the last people on whom I would want to practice my French. And in my experience, they have always agreed with me. But being able to practice your French on the French is nothing compared to be able to practice angel on angels. Imagine it today. A publisher would offer a ghostwriter, if need be, to get your story. You'd be on the bestseller list and interviewed on TV. Tonight, we meet with the author of I Spoke with Angels, this year's #1 bestseller. But notice what Paul says. If you speak angel, but you lack love, you are a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. You may think you're special, but in God's eyes and ears, you act and sound like brass instruments making a loud, unpleasant noise. Actually, he doesn't say, you sound like, he says, you are. You are not what you think you are. Metalworking was a significant industry in first century Corinth, so the Corinthians knew all about what Paul meant. Imagine a little Corinthian factory where the craftsmen made gongs and cymbals. All of that clanging and banging. The Berlin Philharmonica, it wasn't. You would want to cover your ears with your noise-reducing headphones. That's what speaking in tongues sounds like in God's ears if the speaker lacks love. Some scholars think Paul may have been thinking about the metallic amplification system that were crafted in Corinth for use in the theater. You think you are something. You are just self-amplified. You probably don't claim to have the ability to speak angel, but what Paul seems to be doing here is applying a general principle to a specific problem he saw in Corinth. The problem keeps on recurring. You encounter it wherever you meet someone who wants to tell you all about his or her gift, or gifting, as some people like to call it today. Ministers and pastors are sometimes asked, if I become a member of your church, will I get to use my gift? Will my gifts be recognized by the church? Or even, why aren't my gifts being recognized by this church? Paul valued the gifts of the Spirit, but he wasn't much interested in that approach. His first question at the church membership interview would not be about your gifts. He'd want to know about your love, about you, who you want to serve others for Jesus' sake. He'd sound you out, perhaps in more than one sense. He knew that any fellowship of God's people will make room for our gifts when people see we want to serve others because we have come to love them. Isn't it odd that this chapter about love, which so many people love, begins by telling what love isn't, and about who doesn't have it? Not really. One of the best ways for explaining something is by saying what it isn't. Paul often does that. It helps eliminate a great deal of wrong thinking and misunderstanding. Here, he says that love isn't the same thing as having great gifts. You might be very gifted, a very gifted teacher. You might be applauded as a musician. You might be admired for your spiritual prayers. But none of that matters if you do not have love. But if 1 Corinthians 13 contains a description of love, it must ultimately be a description of Jesus. And Jesus did speak with tongues of angels as well as of men. Jesus not only spoke angel, he spoke with angels. He is their king. They are his servants and ambassadors. Throughout his earthly life, they were appropriately enough waiting in the wings to do his will. Even on the cross, he could have summoned legions of them, and they would have come immediately to rescue him. But he knew he couldn't rescue us if they came to rescue him. It was him or us who would be saved, and he chose us. Although he could speak with the tongues of angels, he remained silent because he loved us so much. Instead, he spoke to his Father and asked him to save those who were watching him. Father, forgive them, he prayed. That was more important to him than speaking to the angels and asking them to save him. In fact, Jesus not only spoke angel language, he spoke the language of God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. He was face to face with God, in intimate conversation with his Father. But the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. He came face to face with us, taking our nature so that he might speak to us. As the Nicene Creed, an ancient statement of faith, affirms, for us and for our salvation, he came down. Whatever gifts you may have, love always means that you come down. It means that you use those gifts for the good of others, not to make yourself feel good. It means that you are willing to do things that are uncomfortable or inconvenient for you, or that go unnoticed. For if I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If so, I am not like Jesus. And, ultimately, love is being like Jesus. It silences any noisy gongs, clanging cymbals, and self-amplification systems. Real love always comes down. We know that because love came down at Christmas. I want to take a moment to thank you for reading along with us today from the book Love Came Down at Christmas. We would like to thank the Good Book Company for graciously allowing us to share this book in its entirety with our followers from camp. To purchase a copy of this book for yourself or for a loved one, please go to thegoodbook.com or Amazon. The links can be found in the description of these readings that we are sharing with you. If you enjoy this book and want to learn more about the author or further publishings, please like or follow the Good Book Company on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We trust you have a safe, joyful, and wonderful holiday season.